Portal 64 is a demake of the smash hit triple platinum Oscar-winning Game of the Year 2007 Game of the Millennium, known as Portal. Everybody knows what Portal is, which is not an exaggeration at all. I know it's definitely a favorite of mine, even though I never talk about it. That's always been a thing that I feel like I should work on, like a New Year's resolution. In 2023, I will cut down on carbohydrates, get a voice acting gig, start responding to emails more quickly, and talk about Portal more often. If you've somehow never heard of Portal, I'm going to assume you're not a real person and that I'm just imagining you, and therefore, if I were to explain to you what Portal is, I would essentially be talking to myself and people would start wondering if I'm mentally sound. So unfortunately, for those non-existent folks in my head, you're gonna have to do your own research. Now some of you might be thinking that I've already talked about this project before, and you would be correct. Of course, when I spoke about it back then, it was in a very limited capacity with only one small room with a weighted aperture science cube. There were no sound effects and it was prone to bugs, but the thing you gotta remember about Portal, which anybody who has played it will tell you, is that the most fun part of the game is just amusing yourself with the simple pleasures of the portal gun. I remember when the first demo came out and I was basically just messing around with it for a good hour. Since then, there have been significant developments on the project with the addition of the first 5 levels, and I am pretty impressed with these efforts so far. Like I said when I talked about it previously, I would like to stress something that is very important. This is not a ROM hack of an existing game or anything like that. From what I understand, the game is built entirely from the ground up for the Nintendo 64, obviously based on the foundation provided by the original Portal. But for all intents and purposes, this game was conjured out of nothing. The assets in the code are all publicly available for people who are better at coding than I am, but at least I can open the 3D models in Blender and make them do silly things. Check this out, look how shiny the gun is now. This is the golden Portal gun. Now look at this, ayy, look at this, ayy. Oh, and check this out, I can make it spit out Portal juice, just like in Portal 2. Look at this is really cool. Did I mention graphic design is my passion? Right off the bat, we can see that the game does in fact have sound effects and music. Or we can hear that. Whatever. This is possibly the most significant area of polish since the last update, besides the addition of new levels. GLaDOS shows up over the intercom to spout her usual digitized, patronizing dialogue, and the sound quality is surprisingly very good.
Please move quickly to the chamber lock, as the effects of prolonged exposure to the button are not part of this test.
Typically, voice lines in Nintendo 64 games are limited to guttural sounds from Link and Mario. If a game has far more extensive voice acting, the voices tend to be more compressed or a little shite sounding. Listen to these voice lines from Star Fox 64.
See my ship? Does it look okay to you? Enemy fighter spotted! Take him down! Fuck off, Fox!
People making N64 games today have the advantage of using 64 megabyte ROMs, which, although they were available back in the day, were a lot more expensive to manufacture and use. Today, a 64 megabyte ROM is far more trivial than a 64 megabyte cartridge was back then. Now, Portal 64 is a shot-for-shot recreation of the original Portal, but this time on hardware that is far below the original recommended system requirements. Did I mention I like this game? Unlike the original, you start out with a 2-tier portal gun from the beginning, which makes it easier to mess with the game and get creative with the solutions, even though the puzzles are largely easy to solve. Right off the bat, I'm already enjoying myself, dropping the shitty little radio through the infinite portal. Come on, nobody uses radios anymore. Ever heard of Spotify? Or using a really shady website to grab an MP3 off of a YouTube video? Graphically, this is not an outstanding demonstration of the N64's technology, but even with the limited graphical fidelity, there is no mistaking this game for anything else. This is very clearly Portal. This is like Portal on the ultra-low settings. There is more than enough here to tell what it's supposed to be, and the addition of sound really does complete it. Screw it, man. Let's just keep demaking every single game for the N64. Put Elden Ring on the N64. I wonder how that would look. Probably terrible. I'll take 7 copies. Having actual puzzles and levels gives the player more impetus and direction to push forward and get to the end because there actually is an end. And the likeness to the source material is near perfect despite the limitations. It even came with a really cool trailer made in the same vein as the Portal RTX trailer, which this is honestly a much more impressive accomplishment than that in my opinion. Ray tracing? Come on, nobody needs that. It is worth noting that it is still easy to break this game by accident. Where'd it go? Portal was always a game that was basically on its hands and knees begging for the player to experiment with it and break it just to make their own fun, and this D-Make is no exception. The collision detection is a tiny bit wonky, things like placing the block on the button doesn't always work on the first try. I had one moment where a portal that was left over from a previous test chamber was still there for some reason, and I accidentally walked through it to a previous level from where I had already been, and grabbed a third cube and brought it to the later level. It was weird, but again, very amusing. There were a couple of moments where I dropped through the floor and phased out of existence, not to mention the crashes, which were also semi-frequent. I don't know if it's because of the emulator. I use RetroArch because it's the only one that seemed to work, but I would recommend regular save states just to cover your bases. Yes, the game is still not finished yet, but on top of being a very impressive endeavor in its current state, it's also very funny. Messing with the portals just never gets old, just like the original game. There are also a lot of things that were fixed from the first version I played, like the infinitely accelerating falling speed through the infinite portal. They call this terminal velocity. And now you're a physic. Portal 64 is a really cool project, and when it gets finished, I think the big thing I would want to see is original levels, or maybe something goofy, like Mario 64 levels or something. That would be badass. Aside from bugs and whatnot, that's really the only thing I would ask of this game. New levels. The only caveat with a shot-for-shot remake of an existing game is that you mostly know what to expect. So this would be the perfect game to throw players for a loop and include some funky bonus shit too. But we'll cross that bridge when we come to it. This is a wonderfully impressive project, and I can definitely recommend it to anyone, especially more so now that there are actual levels. And I'm sure you'll all be a perfect fit for Aperture Science. But if it doesn't work out, I'm sure somebody else will take you. Maybe Black Mesa? That was a joke. Fat chance. Ho ho ho. Thank you for watching this video, and Merry Christmas to all of you. Maybe if you lay off the cookies, you can leave some for Santa, and he can leave a mediocre AAA video game in your stocking. Did you know that John Carmack used to program games entirely in assembly code? Today's programmers could never imagine that kind of work ethic. I bet you can't even write a recursive function to do simple arithmetic. But don't worry, I'm sure there is still a place for you at Aperture Science that has not been replaced by automation. Maybe in the IT department, or waste management.